This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
There's a really neat conference going on right now. I'm live in the Bahamas right now at the Grand Hyatt, and this is really neat stuff. So only recently did I get involved with an individual named Howard Fitch, and Howard's like, hey, we got some synergies going on. Let's figure this out. Let's get you down here. So they brought me down here actually for a weekend, and I'm going to learn all about this, not from my mouth. I'm not going to tell you guys. I got Howard right next to me in the Bahamas, live right here. Howard, pleasure to meet you, my friend.
Thanks, Todd. Pleasure to meet you as well.
Great. So tell me a little bit about Capital Events, about the Alpha North Conference going on right now in Bahamas, and, you know, everything from how long you've been doing this to your history in this space.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Thank you for that, for this opportunity, Todd. So I started out doing conferences back in the late 90s for several years, doing sort of mining investment conferences, which were more your typical trade show format, whereby you had a number of speakers that would draw on investors, that would talk, investment gurus talking about how to make money in the stock markets and so on. That would bring in the investor attendees, and the issuers would have booth space in a trade show format. And ideally, they would get some investor traffic from the speaker halls and so on, and thereby get some new investors and opportunities to raise some money and to raise their profile, to get some aftermarket support and so on. In 2010, I left and joined up with my co-founder Neil Curry, and we started doing capital event conferences with a bit of a different twist to it. Rather than the traditional trade show format, we said we're going to bring companies and investors together on a one-on-one format. So we did our first event in February 2011 in Whistler, British Columbia, where we had 20 public companies. A lot of them were junior mining companies. We had 20 stockbrokers mainly, and we brought them together for a weekend up in Whistler, a 2-night stay for everybody, where the heart of it is the companies are sitting still in a location, and the brokers are moving every 20 minutes to each company and doing 20-minute meetings. So it's like an investment speed dating style of approach at our events. And we've been at it since Feb 2011. We're now almost into our 10th year. We've done over 60 events. And we're really pleased to be working with Alpha North Asset Management, doing our 7th annual conference in the Bahamas here, where we've got 54 emerging growth companies that primarily public, but a lot of private pre-public companies that are coming together with 54 plus investors that are comprised of stockbrokers, fund managers, high net worth investors, in a nice intimate format whereby people can get to know each other, build relationships with one another, and do this investment speed dating style of meeting, and really get a good feel where you're face to face and you're able to shake the hand and look the guy in the eye and get a good feel for what the investment opportunity is all about, and give the issuers an opportunity to raise money and to get some support from the investment community.
It's interesting because, now, Howard, I'm not sure how much you know about me, but as an individual who's really just been in media for the last 2 decades of my life, the capital markets and investing has really only been sort of a love of mine for the past 4 years. And I started to go to some of those other trade conferences and the PDACs and stuff. And listen, I'm not going to S-talk anybody for what they do, but it did feel impersonal. And now, as an individual who actually is the CEO of a company, and I think you know that away from what we're doing right now, and actually in the middle of a raise that's quite frankly going quite well, it's really amazing because I'm so new to that as well, and it's only been 3 months, and I think a lot of my sort of personality and my ability to really paint the story that we're going to do and obviously execute and follow through with is about that connection you have. And that's what I love to hear about what you've done with this conference, is bring investors and bring great companies together to say, hey, listen, it's more than just booths and, do a quick little pitch, and it's so crowded and kind of annoying. It has to be intimate. You have to connect. And I've only learned that in the last 3 months of doing it on my own. So obviously you figured out a great formula over here. But what's really neat about it too, Howard, what you've done is you bring this all over the world, don't you?
Well, certainly we're well covered in North America. We do 7 conferences annually. We start in Whistler. We start in the Bahamas in January with the Alpha North Asset Management Conference here. We do the Whistler event in February every year. That's our inaugural event, of course. Then we move to Scottsdale, Arizona in April, which features U.S. investors meeting the companies. Then we're in Montreal in June during the F1 weekend. That's kind of the draw that gets a lot of the investors there. we do a conference midsummer in July in the Okanagan in Kelowna, BC. With that, we're really happy to be working now with the TMX group, the TSX Venture 50 conference this is. So we're working closely with the exchange there. This conference in the Okanagan features TSX Venture 50 companies from the last few years. These are a very exclusive group. Then we are in Muskoka in late September, just north of Toronto, of course, Cottage Country. Draws a lot of the Toronto professionals, of course, up to that event. And then we wrap it up with a conference in Florida in November, so about the third week or so in November. Again, that's a U.S. conference which features U.S.-based investors. So we're pretty busy. This is a really busy time for us here in January, February with the Alpha North Conference happening this weekend and Whistler happening in February. So we're constantly working at these events, and really our job is to bring together good companies and to keep bringing out good investors and just continue to build that list on both sides so that both sides are getting a benefit from these events.
Howard Fitch is with us, Capital Events, here live in the Bahamas at the Grand Hyatt. It's pretty neat stuff, actually, and really she's starting to get going this evening. Do you have some sort of really interesting case studies where, or obviously some samples of a really neat investment companies that have really grown, quite frankly, from conferences and introductions through the Capital Events?
Yeah, certainly we do. I mean, we deal with, hundreds of issuers, really. And, we are talking about the smaller / micro-cap markets. So these are speculative, emerging growth stocks that, in some cases it's a little bit hit and miss. And of course, it's also somewhat sector-specific as to what's the flavor of the day. We're still at roots being Vancouver guys for the most part in the mining sector, which has been in a terrible bear market for the last 7 years or so. But that's a cyclical industry, and there's been some big successes in mining even in the last few years where, for example, Great Bear Resources, one of our steadfast exhibitors that's, several dollars a share now that you could have picked up at 20 cents. There's those situations. On the technology or the non-resource special situations side, we've had Drone Delivery Canada, been a good hit for our investors over the last several years. Have done very well. Supreme Pharmaceuticals, which was in the cannabis space. And of course, I think everybody familiar with the small micro markets here in Canada knows that cannabis went through a big run here over the last several years. It's kind of petered off a little bit, obviously. So, at every event, there's a few that really stand out and do well. And we have recently implemented an investor breakout exchange where we sit down and we talk to the investors after the event and sort of pick their brains because, these guys are the experts. They see lots of deals. They know the sectors, they know the space, they know the capital markets. So we get a lot of good ideas from our investors after they've visited with the companies as to which particular companies are sort of on the list of most of the guys, and it kind of gives us a good feel for our own capital as to where we should be moving along with our own investment opportunities as well.
So great to hang out right now with Howard Fitch. First time we met face-to-face, in fact, and running the Capital Events and the first premier conference of the year right now in the Bahamas. I always think of my audience in particular as some sophisticated investors, some institutional investors that just want to have a kind of a good laugh and listen to the program, and then really predominantly like a retail investor. A conference like this, is there a way to kind of track it, to see what investments are made and what companies are kind of coming up and what some of the big brokers or bankers believe in, so then they can kind of follow suit? Is there that opportunity as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We certainly survey after the event with the issuers and the brokers, and we get a lot of anecdotal evidence as to companies that are coming out of the conference successfully raising $2 million, $3 million, and so on with a particular broker or a particular set of brokers. The retail at our conference comes through the broker. We got a lot of guys that have got large books, a large retail clientele that put a certain amount of their funds towards the more speculative opportunities, which are the higher risk, higher reward companies that we feature. And we've definitely seen over the years, just hearing from both sides, there's been a lot of success with companies that are able to raise money at these events, and as well to get more of a following and some aftermarket support. I mean, really, these are relationship building conferences, and it's all about initially meeting and then continuing to build a relationship between the parties. We always encourage the companies to continue to follow up after the event. The investors do so as well. There's going to be synergies between certain individuals and certain companies that we naturally encourage that to flourish, and it's really paramount for the issuing companies to do the follow-up and to keep in touch and to cultivate those relationships and continue to build them, because these guys can all be key contacts for years to come for any of these companies and the individuals that represent the companies that sometimes move on to different deals, et cetera, et cetera.
And again, it's very interesting to say that as someone who is doing a raise for a company called Red Light Holland right now. One of the things that I actually love about raising money, quite frankly, being so new to it, is whether someone says yes or no. It's a wonderful kind of relationship that you can build, and there might be some other synergies or people they know that know you, and you formulate these connections. And I think that's one thing for young entrepreneurs listening right now is sort of seize those moments. And just because maybe you might have gotten rejected right now, it doesn't mean that in the future you will be. In fact, if you kind of prove them wrong on them saying no to you and build out what you told them you were going to, they'll probably feel like the bit of FOMO, they missed the boat, and they'll kind of want to jump in before it is too late, thinking that this thing can grow. And you must see a lot of that where these relationships formulate year after year, conference after conference, and you really get to know someone, they get to believe in you and your business. And a lot of it really beyond the business is, and I've heard this personally, and that's what I want to ask you if you hear this with the companies coming to your conferences. People invest sometimes in the jockey, not the horse. It's a new expression that I've just started to hear about. Is that something that young entrepreneurs should listen for?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Because I mean, really, what you see in these situations is the young entrepreneurs, et cetera. They're not going to stick with one deal their entire career. For example, they're going to move around, and it is the jockey, not the horse. In a lot of the cases in the capital markets here, you go with the individuals, the ones that have had a track record of success. They move on to a new deal. The likelihood that they're going to have success with that deal is higher. And this is all about getting to know the individuals. And yeah, if it doesn't work out off the bat, there's opportunities down the road, whether your situation changes or situation within the company changes or what have you. And the other thing to point out is that you're meeting at our conferences. You're doing these one-on-one meetings with, for the most part, brokers, fund managers, high net worth investors. The thing to remember is that they all have their own networks as well. So if they take a shine to your deal and they like what they're hearing, you're not just getting the benefit of them and their clients, you're getting the benefit of their network. And they're able to go back and talk about your deal to people that they think would be interested in it. So there could be a real exponential reach from our conferences, absolutely.
Have you ever seen a guy in a trucker cap and flip-flops that's going to raise multiples of millions of dollars? I mean, and is there a look, or should people, and this is one thing I really want to preach, and personally, and I want to ask your opinion on this, it's like, have we, in the years you've done this, since 2011 when it all started, is there kind of this new startup mentality that people don't have to necessarily dress the part, but feel confident in who they are, don't compromise yourself, and by the way, make sure that you're presenting a real viable business plan here as well?
Yeah, we've definitely seen that over the. I think the old business suit and tie type thing was kind of in vogue back in the day. There, we're seeing that relaxing a lot. We're seeing guys just sort of show it as it is, be themselves. There's still that sort of business casual look at the actual one-on-one meetings, but our events are not just the one-on-ones. There's a lot of networking that goes on here. We always open the conferences off with the opening night cocktail reception, which is a casual environment to get to know one another. People have had their meeting schedules in advance, so you know who you're going to meet with one-on-one. But beyond that, you're going to meet a number of other people outside your one-on-one schedule. You're going to meet them at the cocktail reception. The next day, you're going to do the one-on-one meetings. That's a little bit more business-like. But then after that, we have a big dinner that night, closing dinner. And then we always have a fun activity on the final day on the Sunday. Again, just an opportunity to mingle with the participants and get to know guys better. Always a couple couple options. Like in this case, in the Bahamas, we've got golf at the Ocean Club or an island excursion. It could be skiing or snowmobiling at Whistler. It could be the wine tour in Kelowna. Always a few networking options on the Sunday just to further the whole weekend and to meet each other in a more casual environment.
And I really love to hear that because, key relationships and networking really is everything, not just in business, in life. And you want to be good to people and it's got to be reciprocal and you want to have fun with people and you want to trust people, build that genuine relationship. Over the years too, when people meet, is it incestuous a little bit though? Or are we seeing, Howard, this open up really to new networks, new brokers, a younger generation even? Have the demographics stayed consistent, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, no, that's a great question because the small cap universe in Canada, for example, is not super large. So there is a certain amount of repetitiveness with the individuals at the events because we're not going to turn away great brokers and say, "Oh, look, you've been out too much." So, but our job is to continue to sort of keep that mix fresh and dynamic. And typically at our conferences, what you'll find is you'll see half the issuers being new, half returning, half the investors returning, half the investors new type thing. So we're constantly cultivating new contacts to add to the mix. At the same time, bringing back a lot of the people that have been before because they're effective and they're key contacts in the business. So that's kind of what we do on our day-to-day as well. Continue to build the network on both sides so that every event is fresh. So when we do at a conference, we will match up the meeting tracks in such a manner that if you're a returning issuer, you're going to be meeting with new investors on your one-on-one track. But some of the guys you met last year and so on, they're still there. You're going to see them at the networking events and so on. So you're still going to have the opportunity to catch up with them and so on. And we'll have new companies coming out to every event as well. And then we'll match them up with brokers who have been previous. So that when you come back to our events, whether you're an investor or an issuer, you're not going to do the same meetings. You're going to have new, fresh meetings, but still have the opportunity to catch up with other participants you've met in the past at the various networking events to go on beyond the one-on-one meetings.
I would imagine not only a chance to catch up, but a chance to prove out, progress, execution, and like I said earlier, you missed out earlier. And by the way, look at what we've done since. Don't forget about us because we're even moving up a lot more. Howard Fitch is with us, Capital Events. Talk about the sectors that are represented here, and is it all small cap sectors and the trends involved in the sectors as well?
Yeah, sure. So this the Alpha North Capital Conference is a little bit anomalous for most of our events in that there's no resource companies here. This is a special situations conference. The other events are a mixture of mining, resource, oil and gas, and different technology sectors and so on. So here at this conference this weekend, you've got a good representation of companies across the sectors. We have healthcare, we have life sciences, we have technology, we have industrial, we have cannabis companies here. We've got a mixture of public and some pre-public companies, some private companies. We've got 54 companies coming here this weekend. 36 are listed on the Canadian exchanges, and 18 of them are private but public pending, pre-RTO, pre-IPO companies. So yeah, the Alpha North Conference is a bit anomalous in that you're not going to get any resource deals. Other events are a mixture of some junior mining, along with technology, biotech, healthcare, life sciences, industrial, cannabis. So I mean, a lot of us that are based, in the small cap markets, and we're out of Vancouver, for example, are waiting for the gold and silver cycle to come back and to see something happen there, and we're starting to see some of that occur. So that's we think that's going to be picking up at some point this year as well. And then each company, that's not in mining can be judged individually based upon their own particular business plan and idea and so on. And there's plenty of opportunity at all the events in all kinds of sectors. The commonality is that they are mostly smaller to micro cap deals. The average market cap here at the Alpha North Capital Conference is about $55 million.
Howard Fitch again is joining us at Capital Events. Are you allowed to give any suggestions or companies you like? You investor yourself? And again, we don't give financial advice, and everyone's got to do due diligence, all that kind of, disclaimer stuff. But, are you allowed to have favorites? It's like a broadcaster, a National League broadcaster, NHL, doing it on CBC that, maybe they're from Toronto. They can't really say they like the Leafs. How does it work for you?
Well, yeah. I mean, as it stands, of course, we got to be all things to all people, so to speak, with our customers and our clients, et cetera. But having said that, we also have a division within our company, which is CEM Capital Corp. And we recently hired Ryan Iverson, joined us, a longtime head trader with Raymond James Limited. Ryan is managing our portfolio. So we definitely take a stake in a lot of these deals ourselves. And we like to meet the companies and see what the opportunities are. And I mean, we're trying to capitalize on these markets as well. And of course, putting these events on and having the ability to talk with the investor attendees and get a feel for what they like gives us a bit of an advantage as well, as to see, what are some of the common picks amongst the investors. So we have our investor breakout exchange after each event, and we like to capitalize on that and add companies. And we're continuing to build our own portfolio in the sectors here with CEM Capital, and we're quite excited about the opportunities and the opportunity to grow our own capital by taking advantage of our own events and the intellectual capital that resides here.
Q1 2020, any specific sector that maybe is one that you're sort of really eyeing and going, my goodness, this can run the way they do, and trends, so to speak?
Well, again, I'm going to get back a little bit to the gold, silver, and the precious metal sector. I mean, that's a cyclical market. It's been down for 7 years now. Gold has had a decent amount of activity here in the last 6 months or so, which trickles down to a lot of the junior companies that you'll see at our other events, like the Whistler Capital Conference, Scottsdale, Montreal, et cetera, et cetera. So we're kind of looking over in that area. Again, when it comes down to a lot of the technology deals and so on, a lot of them are individual. I mean, trends come and go, and cannabis was hot. It's come off a bit, but there's still going to be some survivors in that sector that are going to do well. Blockchain was a little blip there a few years ago, but nonetheless, I mean, there's still some good business ideas within that area, because I think that's something that's going to be, you can't ignore it. It's going to be the wave of the future as far as the transactions and so on. So we're looking at the gold, silver area and individual opportunities within technology that on a case by case basis we think have a good chance to succeed.
And when you host these conferences, and some, as you said, are catered more to U.S. institutions and brokers and things like that, is there similarities and synergies in terms of interest, or have you noticed kind of different country trends and sort of sector beliefs, or does that kind of all lie under one umbrella?
Well, it does to some extent. I mean, most of our clients are Canadian listed or Canadian issuers. And we do the two conferences in the U.S. where it's a bit trickier for us to find U.S. investors that actually can buy and do interact with Canadian stocks. We're really excited that we're, again, partnering on a second event with the TMX group, the TSX Exchange, in this coming November in Florida, where we're going to help, the TSX is going to help have an educational component at the event for U.S. investors to be able to understand how they can get involved in the Canadian markets and buy Canadian stocks in an easier manner. There's a lot of hoops and ladders and barrels or what have you that they got to go through in order to get involved in a Canadian deal. We're also seeing the trend here in Canada where it's getting a little bit tougher too, because the banks have been taking over a lot of the brokerage firms, and their whole mandate now is wealth management, and they're trying to stay away from the smaller cap deals and so on. And it's getting trickier as well to get a lot of these guys able to be involved in the smaller / micro type deals, and the CIBCs and the BMOs and so on here in Canada. So we're always trying to find new sources of investors and new investors, and work with a lot of the houses that have a predisposition to buying Canadian stocks. And I think that small cap speculative investing is something that people don't devote their entire portfolio to, but you put 10 to 15% towards these kinds of deals, and this is where you're going to have the opportunity for the 10, 20, 30 bagger versus your typical blue chip.
Without a doubt, you usually hedge your bets, and you get the one that runs, and it feels pretty good. In about 2 minutes or less, because I do have to take a break for a news break here at 5 p.m. We're live in the Bahamas, by the way, with Howard Fitch from Capital Events. In about a minute, actually. Is there a way to get the retail investor involved in events like this? Only because, back to those bankers and stuff, I think now with the Quest trades and the TD apps and all this stuff, people actually really are trying to do more themselves without someone else's advice. Have you thought about that? And sorry, about 45 seconds.
Yeah, no problem. Sort of yes and no. I mean, we get our retail brokers. We do bring out high net worth investors. We just can't have every sort of mom pop type of thing because we cover the room nights for the investors for the stay, and we've only got a limited number of positions, right? We are starting to toy with the idea of maybe doing some sort of streaming at the events, whereby the retail investor can be on their laptop at home type thing and getting a bird's eye view of what's going on at the events. Otherwise, if it's a retail investor on his own, he's a high net worth guy that's got a fair bit of capital in the market.
I think that's a great idea, though. You charge them a subscription, and they get to watch kind of what's going on, and another way to capitalize on this, another revenue stream. But really great talking to you. Thank you so much for having us out here, and I'm sure there's a lot of synergies to come. Howard Fitch, everybody from Capital Events,
capitalevent.ca.
capitalevents.ca, and look for Capital Events on Twitter and Instagram and stuff. And we've done some cross promotion retweets already. Let's have a fun weekend, okay?
Excellent. Thanks very much, Todd.
Of course, Howard, everybody.
This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.